So I had an excellent question today that was sent through by a past student named David. Thank you so much. So he asked me, how do I find or how do I strike the right balance being an authority figure with the students at a college or university versus being friends with the students? And it's quite interesting because obviously as a staff member, you want to make sure you're striking the right balance. And I think it also comes down to the role that you're doing as well, but knowing not to cross those sort of boundaries. And it's sort of interesting because there are three sort of methods how I sort of do it, but it sort of evolves around one word, which I'm going to reveal towards the end of this video. So for me, the way that I look at it, first thing that's really important is first impressions. And as that, it's not just in a sort of an education environment. I think it's just in sort of in a general sort of way of life. If you can impress someone within the first 10 seconds, then you're obviously going to make a really good first impression. And I think it also depends on the environment as well. So, if students are friendly, if they're nice, they have good manners, and they're very respectful about sort of the time and the place and the space, then obviously the first impressions are going to sort of bode you very well. And it's interesting because often what happens is that there are some students who will find me being an authoritative figure very intimidating. I know that's really dependent on nationalities. And often, sometimes, there are some students who will sort of like ask themselves, is this somebody that we can sort of, put our faith and our trust in? But I usually think that what's really important is that, if you allow your inhibitions to make good first impressions, then obviously it's going to work between, having that sort of authority to sort of making sure that students are doing what they're supposed to be doing and making sure that you put yourself outside of that environment, knowing where your sort of boundaries are in terms of speaking with those students. So making sure that a good first impression is important. The second thing is chemistry. And I think chemistry is really critical because, if you're going to invite people, if you're going to invite students for a coffee or, a time when you're doing job help or whether you're trying to organize an event or an activity, you want to make sure that the chemistry is there, and so the chemistry is really dependent on how, the groups of individuals work, whether they have the right mindset, whether they have the same sort of goals and inspirations, sometimes often, sense of humor or, different values or sort of little things can sort of build that chemistry. So I think chemistry for me is really important when it comes to, you can think about the times that I've gone to Melbourne many times with the groups of people that I went to, and I think that has to sort of bow down through chemistry. The third one that is really critical, and this is the one that sort of can make or break, in terms of striking that balance, is trust. And I say that because trust really comes a long way. And I remember when David was actually, a past student, there were times when, he was sort of creating a little bit of mischief. And I had to make sure that I told him off and saying, hey, look, there are still classes here. You can't be making noise. You can't be playing ping pong. You had to, sort of leave because it was sort of being disrespectful. But, after, sort of when I'm no longer in my uniform, and there was an opportunity where I can sort of sit down and talk to him, I sort of explained to him, this is the reason why, I had to tell you off, and it was nothing to do with being biased. It's making sure that the trust is developed at the very start or as close to the start as possible, especially when you're dealing with the first impression. And I think with those three key elements, the one thing that really stands apart from all those three is that level of respect. And I think what usually happens is that without gaining the respect of the students and the peers and the staff as well that I worked with, you won't be able to get that right balance. And I know that there's been staff who often find that they feel like that they cannot do that, whether that would be something to do with their sort of personal situation. But I think what usually happens is that often it gets mistaken, as a perception that that it's not normal. For me, I found that being engaged with those students and really striking that balance was really critical in the role and the job. And what it did for that particular student, I think David can contest to that, is that he made a lasting impression on, how the staff saw him as a student, and how, you know, he got himself involved with some of the events and the activities and his presence in the school. And I think that's what's really important, is that if you really start, you know, developing these good relationships with people, if you show the right respect, you know, through first impressions, through the chemistry, and through the trust, then your time, whether it be at a college or a university, will be, you know, will be fruitful and rewarding.